Welcome back to our viewers, whoever that may be. This is our second session of Autumn of the Ancients, a story game based on Fall of Magic. This game is written by Jen Martin and, I want to say John Robichaud? Shoot, no, I just got his, Adam Robichaud, sorry about that. It is currently kind of like in pre-production type thing. I don't know in what format it will come out eventually. But it is about a journey through space. And in fact, let me read you the little tagline. Ancient technology is dying and the liminal along with it. We travel together to the Foundry, the liminal's home world, where ancient tech was born. We played a session of this. And so you can view that if you want any background or history. We won't go into that here. But what we will start to do is we will first, actually, what we will do first is introduce our players. That is important. My name is Tomer, or Tomes. Welcome. And I am a member of the Gauntlet. This is being played under the auspice of the Gauntlet from player to player here, starting on my right and moving left. So I will start with Yoshi. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Yoshi. I'm also a member of the Gauntlet, and I will be playing Dwee, a robotic dog that is kind of designed to ease tension. They look like an Australian Shepherd, but they have like robotic insides. So that's basically them. Oh, and the dog goes by he, him.
What about you, Yoshi? What are your pronouns?
I also go by he, him.
Great.
Lauren, you're next in my line.
Kia ora, I'm Lauren, she, her. I'm likewise a member of the Gauntlet. I will be playing Minister 407 in our adventure from the capital. I've said before, she's pretty much like Eddie Redmayne from Jupiter Ascending. So that's the touchstone for her. I'm excited to see what mischief we're going to get into on our journey.
Awesome.
And my name is Andy. My pronouns are she and her, and I am joining this motley crew this time through, having not had the pleasure of being here at the last round. So we'll see what I can add to the shenanigery. And I'm going to be playing Pim, Sergeant of the Capitol, and I'm really excited to find out what that looks like.
Awesome. And Pim's pronouns are they, them, I believe,
correct.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I forgot, my character is Sesk. And we'll see what these characters look like in a little introduction scene in a few moments. Sesk also goes by they, them, and I go by he, him. So that is our little introduction round. We're going to actually start with a letter because we have a character and player who is missing this time around. And so there is a message that we see left behind. I will let Yoshi start.
Dear fellow travelers, I've been forced to leave our joined expedition. A sister of mine has called for me to return to Echo Station 1 with haste. Our gene splicing plants have started to fail, and my pooled gene bank must be redistributed among my peers in order to ensure archiving capability. Dwee, loyal friend and guide, I am sorry to leave you on this journey to tend to the rest of our group. I felt a connection to you in a strange way that I couldn't explain. Your companionship made the purpose of the trip feel a bit easier to bear. Maybe it was part of your design and something you were meant to do. Somehow I feel your presence will make a vital difference to the rest of us and to accomplish the journey. If our paths ever cross again, I hope to hear everything about the journey. Be well.
Minister 4, don't stray from your path. You must find the ancient tech to save your people and the Seven Sons. Listen to Dwee's advice. I suspect there is something else to this companion's nature than what first meets the eye. There are ancient records of man describing something called Dog, and an old and loyal pet and follower that saved man many times from ferocious beasts in the past. Maybe Dwee will provide protection or important knowledge of the journey. Be well.
Sesk, please do not stray from the journey, and do not let your simple body get in the way. Also, your reasons for this trip may differ from the rest of us, but be assured, if the ancient tech is found, you and your kin will not be without compensation. Your past injustices and grievances have made you suffer. Of this I am fully aware. But remaining as a part of this group of travelers will open new gates for everyone. Be well, and I trust you with this. Vasu, your unceasing advisor. So this is the message that comes to us. And what we'll do as far as starting the journey, if as people who've seen the first issue are aware, we have a star map, and that star map takes us from location to location. And in each of those locations, we play out a number of scenes and a scene in between locations as well. So we, in the last session, played at the Gateway Nebula, and we just finished having scenes there. And what we're going to do now is have a little vignette where you see each of our characters and, you know, maybe what they're doing at a moment in time. And then from there, we will play a scene in transit. And Andy's going to take control during that particular scene. But yeah, first we'll start with a little vignette. And in fact, maybe I'll just grab, so I'm not constantly offloading work onto my friends here. So we actually, we're getting a look at our traveling vessel, right? It's not the hugest of crafts. You know, there is, there's the chamber that we've seen before, which is Sesk's room, right? And in Sesk's room, we saw there was a little cage for the little set of weird computer banks and like lab equipment and that kind of thing. And that's actually what we're seeing in the foreground, but we do see this cage in the background, kind of unfocused, right? And in the foreground, again, we see the test tubes and various things, and this floating jellyfish type creature, right? It's kind of amorphous. It's got these little tentacles that float out, and it's got this green kind of glow a little bit to it. And the tentacles are, they're not really touching the equipment, but as we saw before, they kind of get near it and little sparks fly off, and it's kind of interacting in some weird way, with this kind of computer bank and test tubes and whatever. And we see it kind of float back, and it's floating up in the air, and it goes over toward the cage, and we see a quietly resting monkey there. And it's hard to tell what the cloud is thinking, because we don't know how to attribute any emotion to its visage. It doesn't have one, right? So it just kind of floats down. We see it kind of pause, and then it floats through the bars and kind of floats onto near the head of this monkey creature. And it's at that point in time, and it's almost like it sits on that head like a little crown, right? And it's at that time that we see the monkey kind of get up, and it's stretching, that animal kind of like a couple of different poses of stretches as it's waking up, rubs its eyes a little bit in a very kind of, what we would identify as like a human kind of manner, right? And it looks around, sniffs for a second, and grabs a couple of little kibbles from a little bowl in the corner. But then all of a sudden it kind of the back gets straighter, and it has a different look in its eyes, a very kind of intelligent, more purposeful look, right? And it comes over to the door, hits a little, reaches around and hits some weird switch, and the door pops open, and it just walks out. And, there's this little weird sense of wonder as we can tell now it's a different creature, right? Maybe it's the two of them working together or in tandem or something. And, with the little crown still glowing, but it's actually touching stuff. It goes around the room And not like the monkey. I mean, the monkey's very like fast and, curious and frantic. No, this is a little more like what we would expect a person to look like if they were kind of in wonder, right? And he goes up to the wall and touches it and like presses hard against it and then touches it gently and then goes and presses a couple of buttons and then we see it let go for a minute and the monkey's just running around the room like crazy. That's the scene.
I'll pick up because I think it kind of flows from there. So like if you have the monkey like running around the scene, I think it does like that crossfade and you see like the Dwee, which is like an Australian shepherd, in sort of like the laid down in that curled loop in the same outline that you would see the monkey running around in a circle, like in front of like a hearth in their room. And they get like a little notification and they go up and like saunter over to like a terminal and read the letter that they get from Vasu. So like you see that moment on the screen. And like you can see the shoulders and the head sort of just drop a little bit as Dewey reads it and then kind of like walks out of their room. And like you can see the room that they have is sort of like this very homey hearth, like a fireplace that probably is emitting heat, but maybe not. Maybe it's just light, like who knows. And they walk out to like a much more like stereotypical, like sterilized ship like corridor that's very different than the interior of the room. And so then they walk down and then I think the camera just follows them as they go down the corridor to like more of like the common area where they see like the dining areas and other parts of the ship where other people would be rather than hanging out alone in their room.
Cool. I think this is a rare moment where we see a minister for like by themselves in their quarters, which are very minimalistic since they don't really have an identity. And it's a rare time where she allows herself to look less put together than she does around everyone else. So it's like her posture is quite slumped and her jacket's a bit skewed. She's leaning over her desk. I like to think she's probably smoking some kind of e-cigarette, which is something she hides from everyone else. We probably also like, I think this is just posted conversation with Minister 3 as well, so she's wrinkles in her face, looking quite tired and pissed off. We see her... I think we see her pick up a photograph of a person also dressed in ministerial wear and stroke her fingers down the edge of the frame for a couple of seconds as she just stares at this person. And I think winces a bit and looks to the porthole window outside of the ship. And I think you get the inner monologue of like she's not looking that forward to going back to the capital, and hopes that that's not on their journey since there are many routes we could take. We don't need to go to the capital. And then we see her sort of like straighten up her jacket, put down her e-cigarette, part her quite short dark hair and get that all looking nice and prim, face on, serious, and then she exits her quarters to interact with her fellow colleagues.
All right, and so I think now we get to see, and even though I think Andy, you're gonna frame and use the next scene. Feel free to do a little vignette right now, like what before we see Pym, like what would the audience see as far as Pym? I don't know.
All right, so this is, see how this lands. What we open up, like as the camera pans up, it starts with a pair of like scuffed up boots walking down like the dock which we recognize and can sort of like hear the ringing, like cavernous space that that we all know that the small humble ship is in. Does the ship have a name?
We can totally make one.
But yeah, someone tell me what the name of the ship is. It's real important. Oh, is that too much to ask?
It could be like LNK7. So I always just grab some of the names from the
It's called the Tumble Down.
Tumble Down.
Yep.
Yes.
I love if it's LMK7 and like we just call it the Tumble Down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
It's a nice colloquial name.
Perfect. I don't know what that means, but we can decide. I imagine the ship's, do I get the, like, do I have the right read that the ship's a bit tatty and like humble?
Great. I think humble's a good word.
Okay, excellent. That's the gentle way to say that. Great. So we have the pleasure of these boots sort of, they're not ringing across all the decking. They're too old and like beat in and like sloppily laced. Oddly enough, for good old Sergeant Pym, and as these feet kind of carry across our camera frame, we pan up, and what you expect, given that I've talked about Sergeant Pym as someone to be in uniform, and I mean there's some uniform pants. We start there, and they might have had some creases in them at one point in time. And as we continue, like, well, there's a burn hole. Oh, like you. Is that food? Was that food? What is that stain? I don't know. And then we cut to the part where this person is in a, like, they're like very lean of limb. I don't know what all of these other figures look like, but as we go, we see hands that are surprisingly in one hand wrapped around like another, like the duffel might have been purple at one point in time, but is now like that dusty gray, like lavender, but someone spent way too much money at anthropology to make it look like, right? Like, and the hand wrapped around like this half stuffed duffel is like long limbed and like well manicured, and is sort of the shade of, gosh, I don't even know what a good, like, pale to the point of being like almost green cast, like celadon is like the understated. And then we continue to pan up to a face that is like both like cheerful and like a little bit like and like eyes casting around, and has a pair of like bright like, if this individual's skin is like this really light celadon color, their eyes are like almost like that soft pinky purple color, like referencing back almost to and they don't have any hair, whether that be because that's how said people come, or because Pym has decided to not have hair, right? Who knows? And they are a mess. Like, they look like a very cheerful mess as they like kind of walk along the docks and are looking for the tumble down. So that's how we learn who Sergeant Pym is. And upon arriving at the tumble down, like, is it a matter of like, how big is the ship? Is there like a gangway that's down? Is there a port door that's open? Like, what would that look like?
That's a good question. Like, I think we've only seen the ship thus far when it was docked from externally almost, right? When it was docked at the original Alpha Station, and then kind of some space scenes. And then we just seen like a couple of internal shots. We know that there is one, kind of dock area that we've seen as the entrance to come into the ship at some point. But yeah, I think it's pretty open-ended at this point.
Perfect. I think then what that ends up looking like is that the camera will pan from Pym's face to what was the numerical designation for the tumble down?
The LNK7.
LNK7. And so we pan from, and like basically the camera turns from the face to see these big big letters on the side of the tumble down, and it reads LNK7. And I imagine that the ship, like in being humble, also like needs a paint job, right? Like things are a little, all the micro abrasions from being in space mean that it's like kind of dull and lovely and soft, like where so many things in the great big wide world of space are often like glittering and hard. I feel like the ship is like a soft gray and like some brown, like worn edges. And y'all let me know if that doesn't feel like the coolness for the ship. Okay. And so at which point we see that, and then the frame zooms out, and Pym just walks into what I imagine is the open port in the ship, which if that intersects Lauren with the minister, like coming out into the great big wide world that is. Does that sound like a...
Sounds perfect.
That sounds amazing. I love everything about what you just said.
Great.
So we've done kind of, this is almost like the, the opening to the show, right? Like we see this. And now obviously for those who've seen the prior episode, you kind of know how the game works, but now we kind of launch into how the game normally plays in a round robin fashion, where we each get to take control as a scene framer. So you get to set a scene. The game's got prompts which help us set those scenes that we can use to whatever extent we desire. I think, I guess a question that we might have, like our next location is going to be Liberty's Landing, but the question is, are we at Liberty's Landing, or is this whole thing happening at the Gateway Nebula and we're about to leave, right?
I had imagined it at the Gateway Nebula because then y'all are stuck with someone who's inserted themselves into your biz, and there's time to hang out on the ship.
That is perfect. So, Andy's going to go first, and you get to set the scene and tell us who's in the scene. And, normally what we do is we kind of leave it a little bit open, and it's kind of up to you to set how strict you want it. So, for example, if you want to have, this is a scene that I want to have with so-and-so character, and I want to see the two of them interact, boom, the rest of us will kind of stand back. And maybe we'll make a suggestion if, all of us are kind of open to that or whatever. But mostly, you have a vision, it's your vision, right? But if you're like, hey, I'm talking with this character in the center space, and if you guys want to jump in whenever, then we play it that way as well. Yeah, it's your call.
Excellent. So this is basically like, then we had like the title screen, right? And then we come back in again. And I feel like we open with a tight shot of the minister's face, having Pym arrived on y'all's doorstep. And I'm interested in having this conversation about why is Pym here, and learning how these two individuals get along, and Tamara, Yoshi, y'all's characters, like, totally come on in anytime. That's how I feel about all that. Does that feel like radness to y'all?
That sounds perfect to me.
And I'll just flag, like, I love your character because they're the antithesis to mine. So, like, Minister 4 is very uptight, proper square angles, very emotionless affect on the outside. So, I feel like our characters are going to be besties.
Yes, it's going to be real good. So good. So I would be curious, Lauren, do you have a strong opinion about these characters being prior acquainted? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I could totally, like, I'm trying to figure out if the capital, like, has a fair, like, military branch or not, and if it does, then perhaps, like, Minister 4 might identify you by your uniform, but wouldn't personally know you, unless, like, you're a sergeant to, like, the Suns, and then maybe, like, you would have, they would have, like, brushed paws or something.
Right. I think that it would make real good sense in this case for Sergeant Pym to be, one, if this is what the military looks like, the military is a mess. Two, I feel like the military is often treated as an affront to like the propriety that is service to the Seven Sons, and is like an uncouth, is treated appropriately as war machines should be treated, which is to say that like they're kind of embarrassing and uncomfortable as a thing, the military at large. So having someone moseying around who's like in uniform and not like doing the proper stoicism is also not okay. Air quotes, right? Like I don't know how your character feels about it, but were we in the Capitol like
that sounds
eyebrows?
Amazing. Yeah.
And I have an imagining that then our characters have not met because the idea of military powers being present in everyday business, like it's kind of a be seen, not heard, but preferably not even seen. Perhaps.
Yeah, I love that.
Okay.
So like, why are you here on this sort of like journey of such import, you know?
Yeah, you don't matter. What are you doing?
I love this so much. Okay.
Great.
Cool. So I think like Minister 4 sees you and like takes a step back and really gives you the once over to be like, no, this person is in the uniform that I recognize. This is ridiculously out of context.
Yeah.
They maybe even like slide back a little bit just to create some personal space between them and you.
Excellent. And Tim is very much like taking up the center of the space and is being big, like hands on hip, like fists sort of on hips, and like looks you in the eye as you look them over, grinning. And there you are.
I do apologize. I was not informed that we would be having company like yourself join us on this ship. Are you here to join the K7?
Here now, y'all? Yes, absolutely. Minister, good morning. Have you had any tea? I'm hungry.
I have not.
And Pim will roll over to what I imagine is like the tiny kitchenette and like rummage up beverage making, whatever terribleness is there, and like look at a cup and just like dust it out and make you some really probably offensively dirty in the bottom of the glass. Sort of tea substitute.
Is this how you make it where you come from and your job? She asks very awkwardly.
Kind of looks, Tim will look over their shoulder and be like, you work with what you got, and well, you got me. It's gonna be great.
I trust that you will make a fine cup. I am more used to consuming my beverages in clean glass. However, I will acquiesce in that. Yes, we must make do, as you say.
And Pim will turn around and hand you a cup of like lukewarm tea water. And, like, thanks for putting up with your long-suffering companion. You've really stepped down. Good job. So I'm here to help make sure all these things happen the way that maybe, well, I don't know if it's the way you want it to happen, but it's definitely the way everybody back home wants to have it happen. So hopefully we can work together. When do we leave? Where are we going?
Well, we have a final destination. However, our course is currently unplotted. I do believe that we will be arriving at Liberty's Landing next, however. I'm quite looking forward to that, if I may be so bold as to express an opinion about my preferences.
You should have opinions. They're good for you.
I have heard that. They also get one into trouble.
Living gets one into trouble, so you might as well have some opinions along the way. How's the tea? Slurp.
Can I jump in for just a second? So you hear some like sound in the background, and then there's suddenly this little monkey thing that just runs into the room, jumps up onto the table, sniffs at like a couple of leftover things that are there, not even paying attention to the other people in the room, really, right? And then grabs this little biscuit or half-eaten biscuit off a plate and kind of starts smelling it and nibbling on it. And that's when it kind of looks up, still nibbling, and looks over at Pym, and the eyebrows suddenly kind of like curl down. It's still nibbling, but it's just sitting there watching.
Ah, this is our colleague, I think. Sisk. Who I have yet to understand.
Well,
but
if you like a good biscuit, probably an all right folk. It's gonna be all right. Sisk.
And I think like right after that little, like informal salute,
Yeah.
it kind of like stops for a second, grabs the biscuit, does a little like, and just jumps out and runs out of the room. Right, gone.
I think Minister 4 watches Sisk leave and then looks back to Pym and waits until Sisk is like definitely gone and then says, "Be real with me for 1 second."
Been real the whole time.
Oh, I appreciate the candor, but who sent you here? It wasn't Minister 3, was it?
That Joker? No, I don't work for any of the ministers or any of the sons. I work for the military to back all of our whole society up. So I'm here to make sure that the end of the world, as far as we're concerned, doesn't come around. It's going to be a good day. I got it.
I feel oddly comforted, partially because, well, as you say, Minister 3 is quite the Joker.
Feelings, I see. Competition, huh? That sounds awkward. You gonna knock him off?
Well, it would be a complementary benefit to our overall goal of ensuring the survival of our people. But
you don't say yes or no, do you? Good stuff.
I am a minister. 'Tis what we do.
Nicely done. So, the fuzzy friend. Who was that?
Well, I was given diagnostics on them. I have yet to ascertain exactly what they are like in reality, apart from the theory.
You were the same some days on the good days, but really the only part that really matters is the reality of the situation. So the reality of the situation is that we've got a monkey eating biscuits.
Sometimes yes and sometimes no. I believe that the Ori, the cloud people, it's the best way I can think to describe them, sometimes takes possession of the monkey that is Sisk. I have yet to embark upon extensive research into the nature of their relationship. However,
all right. Good intel usually means asking, so I can do that.
I would appreciate it. I am not that great at engaging people in social matters.
You're doing fine.
Oh, you are too kind.
So, who's the navigator and when do we leave?
Hopefully soon. I would much like to get upon this journey post-haste. I do believe that we will be called when it is time. Although, perhaps best ask Liminal. They seem to know a lot.
Great.
I kind of like the idea of like the door just kind of like closing at that point, like and the ship detaching. Like nobody says anything, but it just kind of happens.
Great, perfect.
Love it.
Awesome. And is that scene like? I'm very content. Like with that is.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Excellent.
Andy, you're amazing. Sorry.
I have tears in my eyes. It was so fun.
Well, shucks.
Cool. So, and do we want to? I think if we actually looked at like the order of play, right? Like normally everybody's got like a scene within a location, and then once everybody's done a location, whoever's next in order actually grabs and does like a scene in transit from one location to another, right? Cool. And we kind of played this scene almost like it would be that, but it was kind of also, and it could be, right? The scene shows us leaving Gateway Nebula. It could be the next scene is like we're at Liberty's Landing, right? That's totally cool. Do we want to jump to Liberty's Landing and just start doing scenes? Or I think, who did transit the first time around? I think that was
I did
Right.
transit the first time. So I was going to say, if somebody else wants to pick up the transit and do the liminal scene to show the hospitality of the whatever Rayari?
Yeah.
Rayari, yeah. They can do that.
And just for you, Andy, if you're because you can look at if you click on the screen sharing of our anonymous user, you can see kind of like the map, right? But it's still kind of fuzzy and hard to read. But if you have in a separate window that other link I put in the chat for the like location cards,
Great.
that is like
The way to
the way to go. And so we're over on, the third location, Liberty's Landing. It has a little, each of these locations have a location prompt, in this case, the hospitality of the Riari, right?
Excellent.
And then we have underneath that a bunch of, on the next card, a bunch of like scene prompts, right? So yeah, like Yoshi said, Lauren, do you want one of us to take it, or?
But before we get too far, I felt like that last scene, even though like Andy, you didn't move your token onto it, like you were sharing a meal, like tea and so on, with
Nice.
Minister
Great.
4. And so part of that space is that you as the person who owned the scene, like the scene framer, get to assign one of those tags, prosperous, imaginative, or empathetic, to a character that was in the scene, whether it's you, whether it's Minister 4, whether it's Sesk. Those were like kind of you could even assign it to somebody who wasn't in the scene, but like as the scene framer, you get to pick one of those tags to kind of add to somebody there.
And you just told me we are currently at the Gateway Nebula. So it was prosperous, imaginative, or empathetic?
Correct.
Great. Oh gosh. Is it what kind of tags, Lauren, does the minister have going at this point?
None.
None?
Yeah.
What? Great. And then my next question would be, what is the mechanical application of tags?
Yes. Oh, go ahead, Yoshi.
I was going to say, in general, it's sort of like the proscriptive tag. It sort of describes what they are in rumor. In terms of like the mechanics later on, in Fall of Magic, when you have a tag, it is that's what they're known for. You can lose that tag. Some of the prompts later on force your character to change in one way or another. And so one of the ways that you can change is to remove a tag or change a tag. But you could also like change like the fact that the minister is the minister from the capital. They could change the minister. They could change of the capital. They could change their name. So like it's another little fictional bit that can change with those later prompts.
Excellent.
Now, in Fall of Magic, from what I understand, these tags have no real mechanical benefit at all. However, the way I read Autumn of the Ancients is they do have one mechanical thing that they do, which is there's, sometimes there's scenes that come up where you kind of do the die roll to see the result, right? And so in those few locations where you play like half the scene and then you roll a die and it gives you a story prompt for what the rest of the scene looks like, you can actually use the tags to add one to the result. And so that's one thing.
Excellent. Okay. I would like to, Lauren, tag the minister with prosperous.
Do it.
I feel like that's a thing that is known about the minister, and that there's also this implication in being prosperous that there's some class implication behind that, especially with the minister and Sergeant Pym playing across from each other, where we have these two very different people as emblematic of class or separate tiers of society from one place. Like the world cultures are not monoliths, despite how often that happens in the way we represent the world at large, right? So
it sounds perfect.
Great, awesome.
So on the on our little play sheet, I'm actually, and you can do this if you want, Lauren, but like in that little index card on our map, you'll notice Sesk, for example, has plus stubborn at the end there as their tag. So yes.
Oh, awesome.
Very cool.
Super. So that's where they can live. Super.
Yes.
Yoshi, I love that I get to look at a picture of an Australian Shepherd. Thank you for this wonderful experience.
I know. Oh my god.
And Andy, so on the map itself, and I can drag it for you in this case, but you'll see what I'm doing if you click on the map is
Yeah.
and you're viewing it. You can drag. Oops. Ugh. You
Aha.
can basically select and then like drag the token over.
Great.
But of course, if you're not careful, you may be moving the whole map or whatever.
Making
Space and
messes.
time are relative. Like we learned this last time when we moved space. So
Yes.
Excellent.
It may be part of the game. We're not sure. Cool.
Excellent. Thank you, Yoshi, for catching that before we went on our merry way. I love it. Super good. So
Yeah,
it sounds like either Tomer, you, or Lauren are going to possibly frame a scene on our way to going. Is that what I hear?
Yes, and normally the transit scenes are somewhat in the perspective of the liminal. So it's kind of like in Fall of Magic, where during those scenes, in a sense, you as the player take on the character of the magus, right? In this case, the liminal, as opposed to taking on your own character. So then, the liminal kind of interacts with the rest of us, right? Or some subset.
Excellent.
And I just did a super awesome scene with Andy, so Tomer, I would love it if you
let's
took
do
us to
this.
Liberty's Landing.
All right.
Yes.
So I think, right after that scene, we, there's that great part where Sergeant Pym is like, so when are we going kind of thing. And like the door just closes almost as if they did. In fact, as an audience member, you're like, did they just make the ship take off? Like that just seemed too weird, right? And then so the ship, we see this scene of the ship flying through space, and there's one or two pretty things in the background, right? Floating in front of, we're at the nebula, so we get some of that gorgeous, like, multicolored cloud stuff in the background and whatever. And the next thing we see is we see the ship coming toward us, right, slowly through space, and then we kind of like the camera almost dive bombs from space as this ship is coming closer and closer to us, and just right into, I guess, kind of like a cockpit type area, or maybe it's the bridge, or whatever. It's this space where we see lots of terminals, and kind of what we'd expect, like images of space maps and whatever, right? And there is a figure there. It's the one we've seen before, right? So initially we see this multi-segmented, almost like humanoid centipede type creature, right? It's got like 5 segments, and these, but it's not, I mean, it's not human, right? Like, in fact, when we see the hands, we can see they're kind of like, all the fingers are equidistant, right? Kind of like 5 fingers around, kind of like a central hand, right? And they're kind of like long and skinny. They end in kind of sharper points, right? And even the top of the head is not a human head, right? It kind of has a little bit of an insectoid kind of look, right? I mean, the eyes are not multifaceted like an insect, but it does have these 2 kind of almost like antennae that are sticking out the top, right? And the eyes look a little more humanoid, but there's no pupils, right? They're just kind of like one shade of, like, you think it's dark purple, dark black at first, but it kind of shines a purpley, metallic or something, right? And it zooms back a little bit, and this thing is not moving, right? It's just kind of sitting there in this weird, whatever chair would take that shape, right? And we see a light flicker in the background, right? And a little kind of hose or something kind of comes out and attaches itself to the base of the neck of this thing. And then, some other lights are flickering. And then suddenly it kind of like, we see the head kind of move up, and it just kind of moves away from the wall, right? And it goes up to, now it's like moving, right? Just as if we would have expected it to do from the beginning. And it starts interacting with the various consoles, and then hits a button and says, or actually, it doesn't even say anything, right? We just see a screen, and it clicks a couple buttons, and some lights come up, and we can see the names or some names, right? They're just like in the weird alien script, right? So we can't really read it as the audience, but a couple of names highlight, and it's about to click on the last one and decides against it, and the name does not highlight, right? But we get this flash to the rest of the ship, right? And I think we hear in each of your individual rooms, right, that you're being summoned to the bridge, right? So maybe what does that look like? Where does it catch you at that moment in time? And what does it look like you getting to the bridge, I guess?
All right, so I'll start off. I don't think Dwee is actually in their room. I think they're in the holodeck that we sort of established last time. Just sort of like doing like running around like an open field, like getting exercise like that they would. And I think the message, like maybe we see like first a shot of like their room, like where like as if we were following the message around trying to find the person where it goes. And so like you see like the shot of Dwee's room where it's just empty, and then it like goes around and follows and eventually like cuts through the wall of the holodeck, and you see Dwee in there, and then you hear the announcement in there of it's like in a very monotone, like robotic voice. You hear like the thing basically saying like, Dwee, you have been summoned to the bridge. And Dwee just sort of like stops and just like kind of like looks around, lowers their head, and then like in almost the same robotic voice like that you hear like that the ship spoke in, like Dwee says like, I guess we're arriving soon. And just like walks out of the holodeck. And like I think as you walk out, you can see it like change back to like the generic like walls instead of like an open field type thing. And Dwee just like walks up the corridors towards the bridge.
I think we see Minister 4 at their console with like a half-forgotten game of space chess like next to their desk or whatever. And they're trying to survey Pym. Like they're trying to pull up records on Pym to just like get an idea of like Pym's background, what Pym's been up to, like their military history and stuff, because like they cannot handle not having all the information, because this is a calculated game to make sure that they best Minister 3. And they need to know all the information. And as they're doing this, there's like a pop-up screen or whatever, or a notification saying like, boom, like please make your way toward the bridge, like kind of thing. And then they like will get up and straighten their coat and head out to the bridge.
Ooh, I have just a quick question. When the minister gets up, does she leave the screen kind of where it was at? Like, do we see this moment where she like shuts it down, or she just kind of like leaves it there?
No, I think she totally just like forgets to like, control L, like whatever. She doesn't lock it. It's just like open in her room.
Awesome.
So good. Tomer, do you want to do this thing?
I think Sergeant Pym is definitely called as well. So what does that look like? Where is Sergeant Pym when this thing happens? This summons.
Great. I feel that rather than Sergeant Pym being in like the least desirable leftover berth in the minute, which is where Sergeant Pym has been left to go and be. Yes. They're like lounging in like again, this kitchen, the foyer, whatever this space is. And since their arrival, it has gotten more messy. It's not like it's shabby or that Pym's monstrously like dirty or inconsiderate, but like the cushions are beaten in or like twisted around to suit. There might be a spare pair of like Pym boots. Pym doesn't have a spare set of boots. Who am I kidding? There's a stack of dishes, like they're just not in the sink. Why would they? Or so on and so forth. And Pym is like lounging, boots off next to them on one of what I imagine like these bench couches with these like really great like worn in and like nice nubbly fabric, and is probably poking around on like a small data pad in it seems highly likely that if you, and looking over Sergeant Pym's shoulder, it's like a choose your own adventure book. And it's probably about something like, it's probably a pretty like young phrasing about someone doing something on like a planet and being, not necessarily being a hero, but like being the scoundrel, right? Like, and so just kind of avidly like doing that and like thinking, and sometimes they'll like flip to be like, well, what's that look like when you make that choice? And rather than having a summons come up for Pym in the moment, what happens, I imagine, is that the minister, I imagine that basically everyone kind of ends up converging in the hallway, and that you have to go through the space to get to the bridge. And so seeing that I've got my doggo friend, who I haven't hung out with very much yet. They've been very busy. He's been very busy. And then the minister, him will like stuff this data pad like into the front, like oversized, like a mechanic's jacket almost, part of the uniform, and will pop up and stuff their feet into their boots and just follow. And like boots are unlaced, clumpy. And we're doing something, aren't we? It's clear we're doing something. I'm gonna do something.
Love it. And so we get all of you walking into this, that same kind of room that we saw, the bridge or whatever, and the liminal is there. This insectoid thing, and we can see like it's got one of the hands is like below, and it's doing this kind of thing, and then but there's a couple that are still off doing their own multitasking bit, right? Yeah, I love that. Maybe there's even a little bit of that sound, right? It's a little bit of like chitinous, right? And like we can hear it. I kind of love the idea that like at least one or two people are just kind of like, ugh, like that's kind of weird. And it turns to all of you and says, welcome. I have something to mention before we get to our next location. We are going to Liberty's Landing, and it kind of motions with one hand, and we see like some screen is out there, and it has this picture of a planet, and it kind of looks earthy, right? It's like, at least from a distance, right? Well, we're used to seeing like blue waters and a bunch of like brown and greeny looking continent island things, right? And it says it's one of our newer colony outposts. There, I don't know if you are aware of this. You'll notice that one of our crew members is currently missing from this little meeting, and and we don't see Sesk at all, right? Like neither the monkey creature nor that Ori floating jellyfish thing, right? So, and it returns to its thing. I have not called Sesk in because Sesk comes from Liberty's Landing. Liberty's Landing was colonized by the Ori in their quest to, find a compatible host. They are looking for something that they've been missing, and our friend Sesk here is an experiment in that, let us say. And I have a feeling that this may be a harder journey for them than it may be for you. I just wanted to give you a little bit of insight. Perhaps that will help in our shared quest. And it just kind of pauses there for a minute, and it's still doing like that. It's almost looking at you guys as if, do you have any questions? But it doesn't say that. It's just kind of pausing.
So I think Twee comes up and kind of like looks at everybody like sort of appraisingly a little bit, and then like you hear that robotic voice. It's like definitely coming from like their throat, but they're not like speaking. So like their mouth isn't opening. It's just like a robotic voice that's coming from the throat section. He asks the liminal, he's like, if Sesk is sort of an experiment, what are the people that we will see? Are they going to be just the Ori without the hosts?
There are the indigenous on Liberty's Landing. They call them the Lino.
Okay.
You may look at Sesk and think that he is a Lino, but again, he is not at this point in time. He is part of Sesk. So the Lino come from Liberty's Landing. The Ori have also colonized Liberty's Landing. However, there is another point that you must be made aware of, which is that the Rayari have also colonized Liberty's Landing. And I think like that name, the Rayari, like I'm picturing it as this is like a, if you were in the Star Trek universe or something, this would be like Klingons or something, right? Or whatever, or one of those. I can't remember which ones are the bad guys, right? Like I think it would evoke normally to somebody within the context of our grander society here that this is somebody who doesn't play as nicely with other people,
Strong colonizers
and strong colonizers, but not on our team, right? Like we may be strong colonizers too, but like, these are like, they don't play well with our particular confederacy, right?
With that in mind, what is the current atmosphere between the Rayari and the Ori? Should we be expecting conflict?
So, that hesitation between both of your characters happened, right? And the liminal, you could see the head, and the antennas first, kind of flipped back and forth, as you interrupted each other, but then, kind of goes back to you. And there's a little bit of click, click, click. And the liminal says, I'm glad you asked about the atmosphere. It is 32% oxygen, 5%, and it kind of stops. And it's like, that is a joke. And it there's no humor in the voice, but whatever, right? And it says, all you need to know is right here. And it kind of signals at one of the screens, and some information kind of registers itself, beeps on your little iPad-y things or phone or whatever. But it says, needless to be said, the brunt of the situation is the Rayari have contested the planet with us. And so there are places, we may find that the situation is a little more charged than we were hoping. We will be landing temporarily to take on supplies. That is a necessity. And there is one port on, and it points at the little map, and it's on some little continent, and there's a little blip, a red blip. This point is fairly safe. We have a military installation near it, and we have not had any issues yet with the Rayari here. Right, and there's a little blip, and there's a little area around it, which is a tiny area on that continent. It zooms in on the continent. And then you see the rest of the continent, and it's all red. And he's like, we need to avoid the red zone. And the red zone's the entire planet, except for this little city, right? And it kind of stops again. And there's always this uncomfortable silence, right? As if maybe it's asked for questions, maybe it's telling you to go away. It's hard to know what it's doing, but it's just sitting there clicking its fingers. And it's going to keep doing it It's just like this uncomfortable pause, right? As everyone's just kind of standing there until either you leave or ask questions or something.
I kind of like the idea that it's like that moment, and then you see like people just like almost like speak up, and then it just like sharp cut to black as like the transition.
Into it.
I think that's great. Yeah, like, and like, and then the scene's over. It's great. All right. How do we want to do turn order? I think Yoshi will be next. So on my screen, I've got me, then I've got Yoshi, Lauren, Andy, and I think that works for kind of what we just did. But before we continue, maybe we should take like a short, like we'll do the 5-minute bio break. Is 4 minutes enough for everyone just to get whatever you need to drink, use the loo, that kind of thing? All right, cool. Yay!
Choo choo. How are you coming along?
Great. Better now.
Oh, check it out bit by bit. I'm enjoying all of the, like, I think I see a bajillion arts and crafts behind you. I'm excited about the arts and crafts.
Yes. Arts and craps.
Oh, my. Stuff.
We've got wall of Nova art.
Yeah.
All this is Lego. These bottom 2 shelves right here. That's organized.
Lego.
And this, that's all Lego madness.
It's so good.
Yes. So I like the idea that right now, like before we see what happens next, there's some guy pitching like to the writing team, right? He's like, no, like this is it. This is the scene where we have like missiles shooting at the ship as it's coming down or whatever. And like, there's a couple of people in the background just like, or like, and one person's like, I don't think we can afford that even, or whatever. But like somebody's trying to pitch some kind of like, special effects thing right now.
I think it's real important to realize that it's like the one like white dude in the room who's pitching this.
Totally. He's even got like, definitely he's got some kind of, I don't know, maybe a shirt or something with some show from the past that's,
about explodey stuff.
Explodey stuff. And it's totally like a problematic show for various reasons, right? It's not like your Star Trek with like, at least during the time it was trying to bring, you know what I mean? Like, it's not that. It's like some other show that everybody's like, ooh, I wouldn't admit to watching that show, but you know. All right.
Cool. I think it's me up. I would love to have this scene between Dwee and either Pym and Minister 4, or like one or both of them. What I'm kind of imagining is going to the indigene and the migrant the migrant end to see the unity between the settlers and the indigenous species. And so like I think this is because I think all three of us, or all three of these characters, all sort of like want to like kind of gauge the setting, like the scene of the people, and like gather a little bit of information. Like I feel like that's a little motivation there. So I feel like maybe that's all three of us like kind of walking together.
It sounds great. Is this would Dewey have like, would it be, I don't know how well Dewey gets along with anybody, so I don't know if that would be like seek someone out and have an invitation, because I can easily see where Pym like invites themselves along as the two of you are on the way at the door, like depending on what.
Yeah, I was gonna say I totally think I would invite both of you to come along. So like I think the indigent and the migrant end, like since we established this as sort of like the one city where the Ori are versus where the Rayari are, everywhere else, I think like this is probably a little bit of like the community marketplace, then ending up in like an inn or a place where people like kind of gather up. And so I think like we're walking through a bunch of Ori that are here, as well as a bunch of probably the Lino are around. But like because Sesk is the only one that is sort of like this hybrid of the two of them, it's like a bunch of different things. Like the Lino I think are much more like what we would think of as monkeys, is that they're around, but they're not like acting civilized in any sense of the word. They're just here and there and doing what they do.
It totally has that feel, like almost like, you know, and sometimes in the touristy shows, it's like, this is Southeast Asia, look at Thailand, and you're in this village, and like the monkeys are running on like roofs or something, right?
Yeah, so like I think a bunch of the people that we see here are the Ori, which are the like these floating cloud jellyfish of different colors that are just kind of around and sort of like managing the shops and everything else that we see. And so like I think we'll open up with kind of like maybe like an aerial like high crane type shot that like comes in and like sees the whole thing, and then like comes down and looks at the three of us, probably like dollying backwards as like we're walking towards it, but keeping that sort of the same distance as we're walking towards it. And Dwee is just kind of like looking like around. Again, they're dogs, so they're like waist height, and they're looking around, and then like they kind of like look around. Like you can hear the voice, the robotic voice from them again, as they go, "This it's not exactly what I expected to see here. Like having interacted with Sesk, I was expecting to see more like Sesk."
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you're a tool built for empathetic purposes, correct?
I am.
What empathy readings are you receiving in this area?
A lot of curiosity coming towards us from everybody else, but it feels very similar to the marketplaces that we see on any other place, on the gateways. They are trying to appear both just like a vendor of some sort to encourage us to go and visit them, but also a little bit of curiosity, as I don't think they get many visitors here. And the three of us are, and I think we just kind of like looks at you, especially since you have that prosperous tag. It's like, and well, some of us may be displaying a bit more wealth than the rest of us.
We sure don't look like locals. Yeah.
Right.
And Pim, you are a tool boot for the purposes of war. Is there anything we should be on the lookout for?
You have got to learn how to re-say this stuff. That is really rough.
I apologize. How best I rephrase it?
We can have the conversation over the next cup of tea.
Very well.
What were you asking? I'm just having a hard time figuring out like who to ask questions of and like where do you look when you talk to these folks? I don't really know. I'm sure they're all real friendly, like, but like how do we get a cup of tea here? I'm kind of hungry.
Would be good to enjoy the delicacies of this place.
I think with that, like, I just kind of wander off from you two as you're like having this conversation to like one of the vendors. And like, I think the camera maybe like is still like it's still centered on where you guys are in the foreground, but like you see Dwee in the background. And so you don't quite hear what they say. And then like they come back and turn around like, that vendor over there says that we can have some tea, that they have some drink that is hot, that is like tea. I don't know exactly what it is, but they assured me it was similar.
Perfect.
I suppose it shall be tolerable.
Yeah, so I think we walk back that direction, and then there's just like a small little like table with like maybe like an umbrella on the outside. Like it's not inside the building, it's just like the outside table. And we just sort of like go over there, and then you see Dwee sort of like, instead of like being a dog, like gets up in the chair and sits like a person like type thing, but like yes, just is sitting there in the chair at the table with everybody else.
Dwee, you're more flexible than I realized. You pulled that off nicely.
Thank you. I think after a moment we get our drinks, but like I'm curious, like what do these drinks look like and taste like?
Yeah. Who gets to say?
Minister 4, like how is it different than what you would expect a cup of tea to be? Like what is it different?
I think Minister 4 drinks it, and there's a taste on the back of their tongue they can't quite place that is so familiar but so different and doesn't quite fit with tea as they know it. And then I think after like sipping it a few times and doing like the thing, they're like, this tastes like the blue drink that Vasu introduced me to. It's very sour, a bit lemony, but it is not too displeasant. It complements the bitter tannins in this tea.
Fancy. Slurp.
Yeah, and I think for Dwee just has like a bowl instead of a cup, and just like is totally licking like and lapping at the bowl of tea.
Perfect. Superb.
Cool. I think after a moment, after we've had our tea a bit, and Dwee just kind of like looks to the other two and says, "So this is tea here. How you said that it reminded you of the blue drink. What is tea like for you in the capital? Because the only tea I've had is from Alpha Station, and I've been told that is nothing like the capital tea. I've been informed."
The capital, of course, receives a plethora of various types of tea from all over the place. However, the blend that I particularly enjoyed amongst the ministry.
We'll lean back and just take this all in.
The blend that I enjoyed particularly was it was quite a malty blend of assam and like honeybush leaves from, I forget exactly where it was, but it was very exquisite and rare. Very malty and warm, like a hearth fire.
There's probably a lot of little plates with little sandwiches and cookies and stuff to go with that, right? Like, and a tea service and someone to do it. Like good
Oh, of
tea
course.
pong. Yeah.
Yes.
Some
How
lemons
else
like
would one enjoy tea?
out of a canteen.
That is a way to imbibe it, I suppose.
I suppose.
And Dewey, is this can't be a regular beverage. What do you drink on a daily basis?
I drink lots of things. I have found that is part of being a good host and making sure that people are comforting is knowing different foods. Foods comfort people unlike anything else, and knowing what people like and what you can get to kind of calm the nerves when people are a bit stressed is very useful.
What a fantastic manipulation tactic. I shall recall this for future events.
Yes. Yeah.
Y'all are two sides of the same coin. Look at that.
Pim, you seem to have traveled quite a bit and know quite a few different types of beverage and stuff. Does this remind you of anything in particular, like this tea blend that you have here, or is there?
Well, what can I say about that? Well, once upon a time, you see, you end up on a ship, and maybe there's some leftovers from somebody else, because that happens from time to time. And this reminds me of some leftover tea that I got in with a crew of mine a while back. So, and when in Rome, you drink Roman tea, I believe is the saying I've heard. Yeah, that's what my friend Bobby used to say. Yep. All to say that this makes me think of like, this tea is telling me like we're on an adventure. It's real good. And like the mouth feel about how it's real soft and smooth despite all these like kind of sour notes, like that interplay. See, I can be fancy too. Like a nod to the minister.
And then she sips her cup, like sort of, and she's looking at you from over the rim, kind of thing. Yeah.
And they'll just be like, "Yeah, it's a good day. It's good tea, good company, good adventure. Whoever we got going on here with our folks that are not like our friend back on the ship."
No, I wonder how Sesk is doing, where they might go. And I think like with that, like we just like cut scene, like
perfect.
That was amazing. You guys are so good at this game.
Group effort.
All right. So I think Lauren, it's your turn.
Oh my gosh. And Sesk isn't with us, right? Like Sesk is on the ship?
Sesk was on the ship, but like, as far as when people frame scenes, if you want Sesk there, Sesk will be there, right? Like, all we got was that warning from the Liminal that, hey, this may be tricky for Sesk. That's why I'm like, it kind of gave you a heads up, right? Like this could be a thing.
Awesome.
But, Sesk is on the ship just like everyone else, I think.
Oh man, there are so many good prompts. Oh man. Oh my god. Sorry, I am split for choice.
No worries.
I kind of want to. I had a really like specific scene in mind. Although the overseer's office like sounds amazing. I kind of want to go for a Tale of the Comet and confess something.
Yeah. do the awkward, have the feels.
Yes. What credit am I? 100. Okay, cool. And move this without killing space. Oops. Who should I confess to? I don't know. It's going to be about a confession about not wanting to go to the capital. So I don't know who's best placed to be my confidant, whether that's the Liminal or Sesk or Pim or Dwee, maybe. Dwee's like the empathetic.
Pick the most awkward choice, right?
Oh my god. Did you sorry, okay. I'm just freaking out because there are so many good options for how this could go down. I feel mean if I steal Andy again, but I kind of want it to be Pim because I think that would be quite neat.
I think yeah, and this is kind of perfect too, because like we have this new character coming into the narrative, like from the perspective of the TV show, like, right, like this episode would be all about like who's Pim, and like that's what everyone wants to know, right? I think it's cool.
Awesome.
Right.
Okay, cool.
As long as no one feels like they're getting sidelined, right? Like Tomer, I feel like in particular, I'm like, wait, what's going on with you?
Oh no, but this is my planet. I'm sure when it gets to me, if nothing else, there'll be some stuff. So don't worry about
Excellent.
Oh,
Okay.
totally. Okay, awesome. So I kind of pictured this scene being, because I love the idea that Liberty's Landing is one of the few green kind of planets that we'll come across on this journey, and I kind of assume that because it's a green planet, they're a bit like more relaxed upon like the environmental like rules and regulations. So you can sort of like maybe like you can smoke outside and stuff, like proper cigarettes, not like these e-cigarettes that Minister 4 has to smoke on the ship kind of thing.
Oh, I see.
So maybe this is, I'm not quite sure if this is before or after the scene we just had, but I kind of picture it being Pim and Minister 4. I guess Dwee actually could be there too if Dwee wants to pop in. And she's nipped away to like have a proper like real cigarette. It probably costs like way too much money, but that's okay because she's prosperous. And like, you know, she can smell the tobacco like in this like hand rolled cigarette, and it smells heavenly. And I guess she lights it up and looks a bit embarrassed because it's not like a habit that is becoming of a minister by any means. Maybe this isn't the tea house. Yeah, it's totally the tea house. So she like lights up a cigarette at the tea house and says like, "I do apologize. 'Tis not becoming of anyone really to keep such bad habits. However, this is probably the only real, honest to God cigarette I'm going to have for the next 10 years of my life. I don't come to Liberty's Landing often, and I surely will take advantage of it while I'm here."
See now there, look at you. You've got yourself a fine opinion about cigarettes. I told you, having opinions is a good plan. Good job. Nicely done. Also, it does smell proper.
Would you like one?
Yeah, all right.
And she'll offer one out.
Great.
And light it for you.
Super
and then,
good. And Pim will like lock eyes with you, sort of. And it's a little like difficult to discern what that's on about, but just a very strong look.
And she meets it. And I think like you see that moment where she's like, I don't know if I should say this, but I kind of want/need to say this. And she says like, it's funny you say that, but I have found that opinions have gotten me in so much trouble in the past and continue to get me into trouble.
It's a good time, right? Here you have it.
Mm-hmm. In fact, this is a habit I picked up from someone who was quite dear to my heart, who resides at the capital, that I am on no longer good terms with.
Oh, sweetie. Nice.
Oh, it is embarrassing. It's... See,
What, having a heart under all that proper buttoned up? Sweeties and cigarettes. It sounds like a good day.
I could only wish. In fact, I would implore all of us if we avoid the capital at all costs. For purely selfish purposes. I was entangled with a minister lower of my status, but she rejected me for another, and we have not spoken since.
I don't suppose that other's name relates to having a digit, does it?
Perhaps.
Yeah, it's written all over your face.
I hate being so transparent. It's embarrassing.
It wasn't you that acted badly, now was it? So enjoy that cigarette and don't be embarrassed about having opinions about things, be that people or cigarettes.
I shall try. Pim, how do you do it? How do you have opinions and not feel bad about them?
You practice a whole lot. And Pim will take a deep drag off of the cigarette and throw their boots up on the empty fourth chair that I imagine is at this table. So, yeah, Dewey, you got opinions, right? You're doing the thing.
Yeah, I tend to make opinions of things, but they are more like assessments than opinions per se. It's a working assessment of how people interact and how things are in order to make the situation a more amenable place for everyone.
Great. So what should I be doing and what should the minister here be doing?
I think despite what you think or you may be afraid of, or either of you may be afraid of, you are doing it. You are already conversing and talking about fears and your opinions. And that is a good place to be.
Good times. See?
I find myself amenable to this assessment about opinions. However, it is so very different from what I was brought up to believe.
But, I mean, this situation is not one where you would be proposing new laws or regulations. That is a different situation, and the assessment there would be a different assessment.
Indeed,
Well said.
You make a lot of sense. I apologize, Jay. Would you like a cigarette? I assumed you would not, but
I do not wish one, but maybe if you just bring it closer, I would like to smell what it is a bit closer.
Oh, of course.
By the way, it's at this point where I think we see as we're panning from person to person, and we pan back and we see the table together, that there is what looks like Sesk, right? Like a little monkey creature sitting there on an edge of the table, eating the peanuts or whatever it is that they've brought out for you, right? And just sitting there kind of nibbling, kind of listening to the conversation or something, but just sitting there on the corner of the table.
Yeah. And I think I lean over and take one, the cigarette you offer and just smell deeply. And it's a weird pause because you can see them inhaling clearly, but then it's almost like they pause, they're actually a machine processing a bunch of data, and it's just that moment of pause, and then they kind of go back to very interesting. This is not something you see or smell very often.
It's also not real good for you.
No, but I have learned recently that from him, in fact, that some things that are initially bad for me may turn out to be quite good for me.
Cheers to that.
I will cheers to that.
I tell you what, we can, as far as I'm concerned, we don't have to go to the Capitol because that'll just rain on my parade. I might have to tie my boots.
Oh, we couldn't have that.
No, not a thing. So, if that works for you, Dwee, if that works for you, I'm happy to do our darndest to skirt around that particular corner of the world. I don't have anybody I need to call on. They might tell me I gotta do something else other than helping y'all along.
I think you see her shoulders visibly relax at that. Great. And there is that look of deep thanks that she can't express in words, but it's in her face.
Aww. Poor minister can't talk feels.
And I just sort of nod and I'm like, Whether we go to the capital or to the other way, the path to our journey is not really my concern. I'm more here to make sure that we all get along and get there safely to the end.
Oh my god, that's such a good place to cut the scene, because like it's not gonna be safe and it's not gonna be fine. Everything's gonna go on fire.
Perfect.
It's awesome. I also like to think that there was actually like the actual film of this thing. There's a recording of Sergeant Pym saying like, "Oh, she can't show any like that comment." Like that's actually in there recorded. Whether or not they put it in the show or not is, one thing or another. But it totally felt like it came right out of her mouth. Like, yeah, right after out of their mouths. Okay, cool. So, there's one thing that little. Oh yeah. So, anyways, who's next? So then is it? Wait. So Yoshi, is it me? No, I did the interlude scene. So Andy would be next, right?
Great.
Okay.
Awesome. I think it's time to go see the overseer Vasco. And I'm really inclined to drag everyone along on this. And especially, I want to, Tomer, pronounce your character's name for me, please.
Sesk.
Sesk, thank you. I would really like to bring Sesk along because I haven't seen Sesk. And I imagine I have a lovely imagining this happens after what we have just come to pass, but like go back to the ship, right? I can imagine that Pym has an afternoon nap because it seems in alignment with Pym's inclinations. And I would like to open up in this office that, Tomer, would you tell me what an office would look like for one of our floaty jellyfish friends whose names I forgot?
Oh yeah, the Ori.
The Ori, thank you.
Yeah, and I want to say that in between these two scenes, like maybe we actually get that image of Pym going back for a nap, or like at least like lying back on the ship, kind of like relaxed in that central room, like the crew, mess hall.
Yeah.
And maybe even still feeding that like the Sesk, like walking back to the ship from your like the inn that you guys were at, like you're going back with that little monkey creature that was there with you, right? Because I mean, it looks like Sesk, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like just before you get on the ship, like the thing won't come along, and then runs off, and like there's a whole tribe of them, and they kind of like run off, and it's like sharing nuts with them and whatever. So like it's obviously not Sesk. Like this creature that you adopted is like just some random whatever.
Some nice random.
Yeah.
Shocker.
So Ori, I think like on the outside it looks like it's like office of overseer Voco or whatever, right? And it looks like a normal door, but as soon as it opens and you walk in, there's just this kind of there's a small little platform around the inside of the door where you could stand, right? And then everything else is like those caverns where you go underground and it's all crystalline and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's like that. Like it's totally uncomfortable. Like no one would be able to navigate their way through this thing, right? But we see a bunch of little like floating jellyfish things around there, and some are at edges and like touching some crystal things, and little sparks are going off, and there's this one little like near to this platform, which is pretty tight. I mean, you could probably fit 3 or 4 people kind of closely together there, before you get into the weird part. There's a little kind of weird crystalline part, which is a different color than the rest. Maybe it's like bright orange or something, right? And that's where there's this one Ori just kind of floating there, and it's very close to this platform. And that is the Overseer Voco's office. And I guess that's Overseer Voco.
Great. Fantastic. I love that we're all sort of uncomfortably close, even though we share in a rather humble spaceship. That's real important. Like, I have an imagining that as ever, Pym is taking too much space. Like,
Maybe you're taking a bunch of space, but I think Dwee is maybe like leaning up against your leg.
Ooh.
Yep.
Yes, please.
And I think Minister Forest is trying to make themselves as compact as possible to avoid touching people.
Yes, excellent. And
Sesk is with you guys, and we see Sesk with the glowing green Ori on top of its head,
yes.
and it's standing very stiff and very at attention. Like it looks very, very tense.
Great. What a gorgeous family vignette. So this being the case, so did you say, Tomer, that the overseer kind of was an orange cast?
It had like an orange glow to it, yeah.
Yeah, great, lovely. Being charming and over as ever, you're like, oh, great, I bet that's you. Hey, is this a good time to talk?
Do you want me to play Overseer Voko?
Do you want to?
I can, unless you have thoughts.
No,
Do you have any thoughts about Overseer Voko and what she needs?
Not necessarily. I think so. It's what she thinks that we need. The thing
right.
The thing that we all need. I'm real curious to see what those opinions are. And the thing that I'm aware of is that our next step is Echo Station. So we need to get geared up for, in my head, what I know is a longer haul. So there's maybe something around like what supplies are and aren't appropriate, and like it might even be like what kind of food, or like what we need to go do to like sanctify our journey. I don't know what values are for the Ori. So I'm interested in all of those things and bring it. Just, yeah, I would love to give you a lot of authority in this space.
Sure. And so we hear, and I think, maybe one of you, that's okay. So we see the glow, and, the voice always kind of comes off of their, like reverberates from their little bodies. And so you hear, welcome, we welcome you, our travelers, to our friendly corner of the galaxy.
Sounds like a really great script.
So how can I assist you?
I've got a list of supplies. We got a run to make. And pull out like the data pad from the oversized pocket out of this tatty like mechanic's jacket. So I was hoping to get sort of all geared up on that front for the tumble down.
And there's a little pause, and you see some sparks go off, and another little Ori comes over, and they kind of glow in weird ways to get like their tentacles are kind of like, near each other, and then it kind of floats off. And, Voko, Overseer Voko says, I think we can handle some of these items, but some are against regulation. I don't know that we can provide all of them.
Against regs? I didn't ask for weapons.
Oh, not the weapons. And, I think there's maybe like a little bit of a pause. And like, I'm afraid we cannot allow you to take any indigenous items off of this planet.
Oh, I was really excited about the tea.
Yes, I'm afraid the tea is still under quarantine. We have not fully vetted it for the Federation's use. Remember, this planet is still under Ori control. And that part actually doesn't come off exactly the same monotone. It actually comes off a little bit aggressive, like in tone.
Sure. I'm not here to take stuff that isn't mine. I was real excited about it all. I didn't mean to. Sorry, Joe.
And I don't think there's any credence given to that. Like they don't respond really to it, but then they say like, yes, it should only cost, and then they throw out some value in credits or whatever. That sounds like it's probably big.
Yep. It's a big. I imagine there's the outsider tax and the I try to take your tea tax, right on top of that, and it's not Pim's money, so Pim does not care. No problem. And like, great, fantastic.
I love that you said that want to take tea tax, because I think it's broken down as the cost plus the outsider tax plus and then the insult tax, right? There actually is like a tax for what you just said a second ago. Then
Yeah. Well, they document everything. Check that out and show that to the minister. Look at that.
Is there anything else I can help you with before you continue your journey? And it almost sounds like yeah, get out of here. Like there's a tone of that in there.
Anything else, y'all?
I kind of like look between you guys, and I look back towards Theori to Voco. And I'm like, we're, as you can tell, not we're new here, and we don't know everything that's here quite as well as you do. You've been here longer than we have, and I don't know. Is there something else that we could use on our way? Something that we could only find here at Liberty's Landing, something that is different that we can take with us?
Well,
Smart.
you will be taking some of these items with you. As you know, the Lonnie was the Lino. The Lino was the little monkey creatures, right? The Lino eat a very specific diet. So that is the only thing we found that nourishes them is, she mentioned some leaf, right? And you already have that on your docket. I don't believe we have anything else that we could offer you, unless, of course, you do enjoy any of the sports that us Ori enjoy.
Sport.
Yes, I don't think I've been familiarized with the sports that the Ori enjoy. I've interacted with Sesk a bit, and like I kind of like look over to Sesk, and like maybe like the split screen, you see the holodeck thing that we had before that was super awkward, where Sesk and we were on there before. I'm like, we didn't really get to talking about sports. Maybe you could, like, would this be sports equipment, sports media? What is it that you're offering towards us?
We have a sports facility here. I have given you complimentary tickets to the facility if you would like to attend.
That would be excellent.
And there's no explanation of anything. There's just like, that's it.
Perfect.
I think, yeah, done. Yes, I could not be more excited.
Sure.
I kind of close on him like elbowing the minister in the shoulder and being real on about it. And I imagine, I was going to say, I imagine the minister's not on about that.
Yeah, it's like edging further and further away from the Olu.
Entire time, by the way, the Ori has not responded. So Voco has not responded or talked to our friend Sesk at all. And even at the end, you guys are all jovial, or interacting, and we just see Sesk as the monkey creature just like turn and walk out in a very kind of like mechanical way. Right?
Mm-hmm. I have this imagining that Sesk is like taking up the tail of the crew. Like I feel like it's kind of this callous and sad moment where no one's paying attention, despite having been had like warned about like taking care. And that we kind of that's the thing we see is like the doors from the inside close on this like lonely small figure behind these behind these three like frolicsome almost.
I kind of like that.
I'm so sad now.
Yeah, I did it right. Excellent.
You did the stat right.
Mm-hmm.
All right, great. Cool. Is it me?
Yeah.
All right. So I will grab
Tomer freeze.
Oh,
Oh, I think he's back.
hello, I'm back. Am I back?
Yay.
You're
You're back.
Did I freeze? All right. Sorry about that. All right. So, yeah. So Odin's shipyard. We'll do that. What you need for your journey. Oh my gosh, am I still frozen? Am I good? Oh no.
You're good.
I just saw Lauren looking up.
There's a mosquito in my room, so I'm trying to kill it.
Mozzie. The worst. All right. Let me see. You know what? I'm going to make this. I think we're just going to see Sesk in this scene. It's going to be a fairly short scene too. And if you guys see an opportunity at the end or anywhere to jump in, feel free. But
No, that's great.
yeah, so I think what we see here is we're in the shipyard. We see the ship. It's actually on the ground, right? And not far away from it is, a bunch of buildings. It almost looks like a future version of an airport, right? Like lots of flat cement and cargo boxes and crates and things and whatever, right? And maybe even in the distance, we actually see, so far we've seen this little like the inside of the city, from various angles. But right now we're kind of on the edge of the city and we see this huge wall in the distance, like far away, right? Like almost like, oh, that hill over there. And then there's this massive construction that is just goes all the way across the horizon, right? I mean, it looks like this massive wall around the city. And we're seeing little pockets of like explosions, like above the wall, right? So above the wall, like at first we just think, oh, maybe that's the sky. It's a weird shade in this planet. But it looks like there's actually probably like a shield that comes off of it. And there's like little missiles that are hitting it occasionally from the outside, but you don't even hear them, right? I mean, it's so far and so small. You're just seeing that as kind of, it's almost like fireworks, right? And we see some Ori is floating, in a weird cockpit thing of a weird looking forklift, basically, because that's what it is, right? And it's just moving this huge crate of like a pallet of boxes to the ship, right? And it gets to the ship and the forklift moves up and it, goes in there and we see some other little like robotic helper like moving things over box by box into the ship. And then it pans out a little bit more and you see another crate come over, right? And we know our ship is not very big, right? But it looks like there's a couple of these pallets that are being brought over, right? And I think what we see is like as we pan back, we see Sesk, and I mean, unmistakable, right? Because the glowing green Ori floating on his head, and he's kind of standing there, not quite as stiff. It's a little more like hunched over, and we see another Ori next to Sesk, just floating in the air, right? Like maybe a purple hue. And we can hear the communication between the two Oris, right? And Sesk is saying, this is a lot harder than I thought it would be. I mean, in general, but here it is really, really hard to maintain any kind of control. And we haven't heard Sesk talk in an emotional way. This is not how he normally talks, they normally talk, which is very like monotone-ish. This is a little more like it sounds like you're talking to a person, right? There's a level of emotion there. But the response is from the purple one, and it talks in the more monotone way, right? And it just says, I think it's because these perflectors are definitely at 13%, whereas they should normally be at 75%. And part of that may be the interlinking between, and then coming back to the home planet, obviously, that, and it's going on like very logically about some stuff. And you just hear a sigh, right? Like Sesk is just like, yeah, I guess, right? And there's just kind of that tail of uncertainty. And finally, the purple one goes, what you should really do, though, is give in to the emotions of the creature. Allow it to feel itself when it needs to. And therefore, you will take it to a high and be able to take control back at a low, right? Just some weird logical sounding sentence. And the thing that Ori floats away, right? And there's that moment, like this kind of like a pause, and Sesk kind of gets up a little bit and sits a little more comfortably. Like you see Sesk sitting more like the monkey does when it's just kind of like hanging out, like the other monkeys you've seen, around this place. And it sits up, and there's a little bit of like intelligence in the eyes, and it looks around, and then it kind of tentatively kind of like runs off a little, and then runs off a little again, and then we see some other little Lino monkey creatures kind of like come over, and there's that tentative like, who are you? Are you part of the tribe? Hey, that kind of thing. And there's an interaction that goes on, and this whole time the green Ori is on top of Sesk, right? It's on top of the head. It's not like it's gone away. And we can see a little bit of interplay as like one of them like offers a little nut, and Sesk takes it and kind of like nibbles on it a little bit, right? And that's kind of the end of that scene.
Can I interject a little bit into
Yeah,
there?
yeah.
I think at the moment, like when Sesk like goes down to see like the other Lino, you see like if the camera's still focusing on that, just like before, you in the background you see Dwee just sort of like come up to like the platform, like where all the crates were getting loaded, and do like what the dogs do, like where they circle like 3 times and then lay down. But like it's that is like they circle 3 times and like lays down, and like head on the paws, like looking out, just like kind of like watching as the scene happens.
That's perfect. Awesome. Yeah. And I'm going to say, like, when we come back to the ship, whoever takes the next ship scene, there's like crates everywhere because like they don't really fit, right? So there's just like crates and crates like all over the hallways and randomly on top of like tables. And, from now on, like in the near future, I think there's just going to be like lots of crates.
Rude.
Whose turn is it now?
I think technically in the turn order it's me.
Right.
But I moved us not last time, but the time before.
Yeah. So should we give it to Lauren maybe?
Yeah, I was
Andy kind of got us here, right?
Yeah.
Oh no, I was hoping I wouldn't have to pick. Oh yeah,
it's
we're like half an hour left, right? I could I could take like a 2-minute break to go to the bathroom and then come back while I
let's do that. We'll take a quick bio break and then we'll get back.
Thanks for remembering, Andy.
Yeah, and we'll do like the quick time check-in thing and see what we have left for. Maybe we have left for like this next scene, and then
Awesome.
All right, cool.
Sounds good.
BRB. How goes it, Yoshi?
Goes pretty well. I've got a busy day today, and I'm looking forward to it.
I hope it's gentle in the process of you doing it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it starts off with this game, Autumn of the Ancients, then going to Sea of Stars to play that game. And then I'm going to go play Changeling in person. So I've got a full day of games.
Just stay hydrated, go from there, right?
Yep.
Good stuff.
Exactly.
I hope you have a wonderful time. Make bad choices on my behalf.
That's a good plan.
I try to make bad choices, despite that I have such I really try to fight my like play safe inclinations in that regard, right? Like how can I escalate this?
Yep.
Here we go.
Yep.
All right. So we have, it's 8:30, which is kind of like our rough end time frame. I gave a little bit of a buffer because I know usually by 9 I've kind of got to move. So we have basically enough time to do kind of maybe this interlude scene and see where we end up. And then, yeah. Normally, and by the way, normally we do a debrief afterwards if people want to. At that point, I usually cut the recording off, and then we'll do that separately. Oh, I just wanted to say I was really happy with one aspect of the last scene that I really loved was that it says what you need for the journey, and it's about all these supplies, and it looks like that's the part you need, right? And of course, that's not like what the scene's about at all. But all right, so the next location possibilities, I show them on the map there, and you can see them. There's basically the ancient cloud. That's one direction. And of course, there's the capital cluster. So yeah. Lauren, do you feel like you've made a decision?
Ooh, I feel silly if I didn't take us around the capital cluster route.
Right.
Now, one way to play off of it is you could totally be like, I mean, part of it could be that we actually try to avoid the capital cluster, but there's somebody or something which takes us there anyways, possibly not of our choice or volition, but.
Yeah, I have something in mind. It's,
Okay.
I feel, man. I'm Tom, you did like such a great job of like doing all the bridge setup and stuff for the time prior that it's big shoes to fill.
Remember that the liminal can have a different like avatar. Like they can look like something different. Like there's
Yeah,
no reason they have this. Right?
I think part of that setting that scene was also like we saw that thing, but then it kind of got turned on or got used or something. So like, yeah, I think that's totally a possibility, right? Like that's just one of maybe many avatar things that it can use.
Yeah, totally. Very like Ready Player One. So I'm not quite sure where this scene's gonna go, but I kind of see it beginning with the liminal like checking their messages, and one message that has come up consistently is like a rather formal HR complaint, which is strange considering this ship is like very homely and humble and not that hierarchical or authoritative. But there have been several requests by Minister 4 to avoid the capital. And it's written in very like HR bureaucratic language, like request, route through the ancient cloud, delta belt, reason, like personal brackets, like choose not to disclose, for sensitivity reasons / like matters that pertain purely to the capital cluster in brackets. And the liminal is kind of just like ignored them for some time. And I think it's to a point where there's like a polite knock on the liminal's door from Minister 4. Minister 4 enters and says like, I do not mean to be so bold or so forward or heated for that matter. However, like all this is very monotone, Minister 4. I do notice that you have read my messages about requesting we do not persist through the capital, and yet you have ignored them. I would please issue a plea that we instead route through the ancient cloud. And the Liminal says, Minister 4, I do apologize for having not replied to you. However, I have been doing some research into which path would be the most safe upon our voyage. And I know that you are a individual of facts and evidence based purely on objective assessment. And while I acknowledge your request, I put to you that the ancient cloud is experiencing some disruption and disturbance, and it would be much safer were we to venture through the capital. I do hope that you will be able to put whatever personal matters you have to one side, for you are a minister of such high standing, and I trust that I will have your objective support through this part of our journey. And I think you see like Minister 4 trying really hard not to emote and sort of getting quite tense, and says, Liminal, while I appreciate your factual assessment of our request, I would implore that we discuss this with our colleagues, for are we not a cohesive unit, a team, if you will? And I would appreciate their input on the matter as well, with no disrespect. And then I think that's when you guys get the call to like go to the bridge area to see the standoff between Minister 4 and the Liminal.
Yes.
I will say that Seth's coming into the room. There is, they bound in, right? Like a monkey, kind of, right? Kind of like run in, and there's a little bit of like looking around real quick and kind of that curiosity, and about to start walking towards some object over on the side, like not even pay attention to why we're here, right? But then there's a kind of pause, and then sitting back on the haunches, and then getting up a little bit more kind of normally and walking over. But there's a little bit of an ease to the walk. It's not quite as stiff as we saw in the last couple scenes, right? And Sesk shows up and, is just standing at attention, just waiting for the rest of us or whatever.
I think to like mirror that sort of action is Dwee walks in sort of like calmly, and then like sort of like pauses as soon as like they as he like looks at Minister 4 and the Liminal like together, and there's just like that momentarily pause of like looking at things, and then just sort of like walks sort of like calmly up to Minister 4 and just like bumps up against Minister 4's legs and just kind of like rubs his head against her knee and like trying to like nudge up against the hand, and then just kind of like standing there like waiting.
Fantastic. And then Sergeant Pym's entry is like sloppy shoe, clompy clomp, and has the pleasure of, they sort of lean in the doorway to the bridge of the cabin. I imagine it's very tight, like there's space to stand, but not a lot, right? By and large, like, yeah, I imagine you go to the bridge and you sit down because you should be in a station sort of deal, or a jump seat. So that all being said, like leaning in the doorway, and I have an imagining that the minister's face is like stitched up uncomfortably tight, right? And that the Liminal is sort of as implacable as ever.
Yeah, definitely.
Great. And so Pym will roll in, and it will have like tucking that data pad back into a pocket, having been reading something, and has like probably another dirty cup of tea. And whoa, what are we arguing about?
And you see I think Minister 4 like you get the bald fist of like her trying to control herself, and then sort of like it relaxes on Dwee's head, and like she gives Dwee's head a bit of a scratch, and she like relaxes a little bit. And then she takes a breath and she says, I thought we had a mutual understanding that we would not be visiting the capital. However, the Liminal has informed me that it would be safer to venture that route, as the ancient cloud is experiencing some disturbances.
Oh, sure, the ancient cloud's always having some disturbances. We know that. That's nothing new. That place is a mess. But, like, the capital's a mess, too, so we thought we'd go for the new one, because, like, we're from there. I don't need to check in. They know what I'm doing. I send emails.
And the Liminal looks to Pim and says, Indeed, I do appreciate that the vast expanse of space is chaotic and random, and as you say, a mess. I would implore you, Dwee, to counsel Minister 4 through this period.
I will do what I can, Liminal. It's what I am here for.
Excellent. And then she looks to Minister 4. They look to Minister 4 and say, I think that with Dwee's help, you should have no problem traversing whatever personal business you have at the capital. And would you not agree factually that with the aid of your companion and the facts as they are in relation to the cloud and the disturbance and all of its messiness, that it is not the most reasonable, logical route to take on this trip? I think you see M4 like shrink back a little bit as she's being told by the Liminal.
Yeah, Pim will be purposefully obtuse and like, whoa, that is a check and a mate. Rough.
And maybe the Liminal even like pushes them a little bit more and says like, if you do not think that you're fit for this journey, we can deposit you wherever you like. However, I think you should be up to the challenge, Minister 4.
That's really mean.
And I think you see Minister 4 shrinking back, and they say, like, she says, I shall endeavor to do my best, Liminal, for I live to serve you and your greatness.
Dwee just sort of like bumps up against you again.
Oh.
So would you guys normally leave the chamber at that point?
Yeah, I think so.
I kind of like this idea of like everyone leaves, but Sesk is still there, right? And Sesk kind of looks up at the Liminal and says, I've just checked and it doesn't look like there's any danger in that cluster. And then you hear, and that's the voice of the Ori, right? But then you hear it like a little bit of like, like kind of like the monkey noises. And then Sesk is like, oh, wait, did you do this as a test to make sure that she's, oh, and there's like this kind of like confused like realization or something. And yeah.
You totally get like I love that imagery of like the fingers, and the Liminal like slithers up a little bit closer to Sesk and says, that is the thing about truth. Truth is inevitably subjective. And 'tis only a construction of the facts that lend itself to its truth. I'm sure you understand this.
And then there's a little, whoo, whoo, and then a more certain, oh, yes, I do understand. And we see Sesk leave the room. Unless.
Nice. No, that's perfect. Sorry, I feel bad for making that scene all about my character.
I think that was great. Like, I think you pulled everybody in, and it was just perfect. Like that.
Oh, good.
Yeah, no, that was fantastic. I have no issue with any of that, so please don't.
Okay, cool. I'm glad. I take it back.
You can have those feels. I'm excited that we got to see some of what that was on about, even if that Vel's getting bullied by the Liminal. Rude.
Oh my god, the check and mate. Okay, so as far as the game wrap up for today, I think we've kind of hit the edge here, and as far as administrative wise, I'll get to you guys. We'll talk about that afterwards. But is there anything anybody wants to say before we head off and say goodbye to our internet friends?
It was real good being here. Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah.
Thank you all for your generous play and collaboration. It's real lovely. So appreciate you.
Super fun.
It was awesome.
Yes. All right, cool. Well, goodbye, internet. We'll see you next time.